Hi, Mary Beth. How are
Hi,
you?
Robert.
Let me just for all those who are dialing in or watching this video. My name is Robert Voisey. I am the director of 15 Minutes of Fame, and this is Mary Beth Orr, who is a fabulous French hornist. I guess that's right, and singer. And yeah, Mary Beth, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, yeah, I am currently living in Michigan. I'm originally from Charleston, South Carolina, so I'm a Southern girl born and raised, which is part of the folk influence that comes into my artistic projects, my solo projects. I'm My day job is I'm third horn with the Grand Rapids Symphony, and I started off music at 7 as a pianist, and then joined band and fell in love with the horn when I was, normal middle school age here in the States. And I really had been singing, I think, since the time I was born, but I don't think that I really embraced my voice as something that I wanted to do in any kind of professional capacity until much, much later in life when I was starting to really develop my artistic voice, and not so much in what do I want to be successful at doing, but what is it that I want to say? And I think that's a very interesting shift that happens in the mind of, and sometimes it doesn't, but for those of us that are in the classical music world, that especially our orchestral musicians, there's always considered a very conventional line you need to toe all the time. And for me, I really made a choice not so much about, okay, what can I be the best at doing, but more, what is it that I actually want to contribute and say? And that's a shift in mindset that I think makes you a little bit more of an artist. You have a little more of an artist mindset because you're willing to take those risks. Even if other people aren't going to like it, you feel compelled to say something and to share something in a certain way. So that is kind of like my nighttime personality. If I have my day job in the orchestra, even though we do perform at night, I do have to have this other outlet to be an artist and share.
Sure. Um, so I guess that's let's talk about day jobs and night jobs, right? So you're working in an orchestra now.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about you know career success, money. Like what's success as far as that route is for a musician.
So asking how lucrative is it to be a symphony musician? Is that what where we're going with, or
Well, more of like um, just for people who don't really know what the life and career path of a musician is. So
right?
you you pick up an instrument in high school or maybe in grade school, whatever, and you start practicing and there's an impetus or whatever to go to college and like and sort of really get on the career path, right? I
Right.
mean, would you say that's about when you were like, oh, I'm going to be a musician when I grow up? Like,
I think it
what?
happens differently for different people. I know for me, I tried a lot of things. I mean, I loved dance. I tried gymnastics. That was a disaster. Uh, it just felt like I understood the language of music, even if I didn't know, at 5 or 6 years old, what notes and rhythms were. And as soon as I started to learn those, it just unfolded for me like this incredible playland, I guess. Um, I came to French horn because that sound, I just absolutely adored that sound. And I had fallen in love with a Mad About Beethoven CD that my parents had given me. I got in my first own personal little, music player. And I fell in love with Van Cliburn in the Tchaikovsky competition. Those were the recordings that I had. And so those, very horn and piano heavy, right?
Right.
So that definitely shaped a lot of, what I wanted to do. I actually started out in college as a music education major because that was more safe, right? I do like to be very grounded, and I like security, even though I chose a career path that is literally the exact opposite. Um, but for me, I felt chosen, like there was no option. It was only going to be music, even though maybe I could have done something else. In theory, everything else, I get bored so easily with everything else. Music is the one thing that I never ever got bored doing, and I felt like I'm the fullest, best realization of myself when I'm on stage. So, you know, it was who I was, not something I did, even though people will tell you that's not healthy, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. It just is what it is. That it's the truth. And it's more exhausting to try to be like, oh no, well, I should be healthy and music is what I do. It's not my identity. Well, bull. It's completely my identity. That's exactly who I am. I am a musician. It's my language. It's my soul. So what led me to the orchestral path, though, I will be honest, I was in music education, and the idea of conducting children and teaching them music pieces, middle school or high school band director or orchestra director sounded amazing in theory. And then you realize all the other things that you actually have to do that take up far more time than you're going to spend more of your time doing than the actual teaching of the students. And I started to really, I thought about student teaching. I started to get kind of nauseous, honestly. And this was pretty early on. This was, freshman, sophomore year in college. And I was double majoring on piano and horn at the time as well. So I ended up really having to be very brave, for myself to take that leap. When I thought about playing in an orchestra, I just got excited. I mean, definitely still in my stomach, but it was always, but that, most people are never able to do that. And who knows if I'm good enough and all of this. And I just, made the leap saying, I physically didn't think I could do the other major anymore. I couldn't do music ed anymore. The track, for those that might be considering wanting to do it, I had a really great mentor named Jerry Folsom, who was principal in LA for a very long time. My first summer at Aspen, he said to me, look, the path to success, meaning for me, what I equated with success at the time was a full-time orchestra position, salaried, at least 40 to 42 week orchestra season, a year, salary, benefits, all of that stuff. He said, the path to that success is littered with the rotting and dead corpses of talented musicians. But it's not with those that just didn't give up. He goes, the law of averages, if you just don't give up, you'll find it. And ironically, the journey getting to my path, I had great feedback when I freelanced places. I won plenty of regional auditions where I was locally in Michigan, because that's someplace I moved later after college. But I didn't really, and ironically, I didn't really end up getting the thing that I had used as my validation as being successful, used as my defining achievement as being successful as a musician, until I let it go. When I started doing more solo competitions and saying, hey, I don't think I want to be just, and I don't want to say just, but at the time I felt like a bit of just an orchestral workhorse. I was playing the same pieces over and over again. I wasn't having any growth. I felt really, really stagnant. And so I made this shift to do solo things, and actually decided to go back to school and got a very intense and wonderful distinguished fellowship from MSU. That was an incredible opportunity. And I was going to make this whole shift. And then as soon as I made that shift, this was around 2015, and I'd started doing a lot of solo competitions in 2013. The first one was the International Horn Competition of America, and I shocked the crap out of myself because I ended up making it second place in the finals. I thought my husband and I were just gonna have a fun bourbon vacation, because I'm like, I'm not gonna get past prelims, and then end up competing the whole time. And then when I make that shift to want to just be an artist and soloist and think about what I wanted to say, and then within a 3-month span, I get the distinguished fellowship at MSU. I get to the finals of Lyric, and then I win Grand Rapids. So, I mean, it just goes to show you this idea. So all musicians, young musicians out there, I'm actually thinking about, doing a vlog on this very subject. We fixate as college musicians on how to win an audition, win, 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 win. And ironically, if you ever start sitting on a committee, you realize what you just want to hear from a musician is a level of comfort in their playing, a level of comfort in their voice as a player. It's actually quite simple what we want to hear. We don't need to hear you doing, the loudest dynamic you've ever played or the softest dynamic you've ever played. And the things that actually end up touching us as a committee is a sense of artistry, tenderness, musicality, like within, what's written there, not reinventing the wheel, but just a sense of sharing yourself. And I think I fought that for so long. There's also so many different paths now too, outside of just, outside of an orchestra job. Don't get me wrong, I love it. But there are quite a few other people that I know of that are making incredible careers out of solo and chamber entrepreneurship, which I'm also trying to do, finding platforms to share new music like what you're trying to do here with 15 Minutes of Fame. So the career path, especially if there are any concerned parents watching, which I look back and I like, God bless my parents. They never shared any concerns with me if they had them, which as a parent myself, I'm like, yeah, I would have concerns for sure. But I think no matter what it is that you want to do, it's about knowing yourself really, really well. Not limiting yourself to one ideal that isn't actually even yours, because I think I had done that to myself for a while, that I limited myself to a scenario that I didn't even create or that was kind of set forth for me. And I think the other is you just have to have so much tenacity and not give up at all. And what it's like, you have to be your biggest cheerleader and believe in what you're doing and just not stop and keep trying to discover. And I think that's the other thing. Don't just keep doing the exact same thing you've been doing over and over again. If something's not working, be willing to adapt and discover. Hopefully that answered your question.
Absolutely. Wow, there was a lot.
I am a lot, Robert. I'm very entirely aware of how a lot I am.
Look, can maybe start backwards. I've had a lot of parents that have come to me and they're like, oh, my son or daughter wants to be a composer, no looking for that path of sort of safety or, going to work hard and make it and so forth. And sadly, one of my comments is always like, if they love it and it's their passion that they want to do, try to support them. It's not easy. And without the support, it's going to be a lot harder and it's just going to be ruthless because it's just a hard career. If they can do anything else or they like it better, they should do that.
I think you kind of need it like it's another nutrient for your body, like air, water, food. I mean, you have to need it to feel like you're being true to yourself, that you are actually, being yourself. Because it's true. Like if you think you could do something else, you probably should.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting when you're talking a little bit about the healthy or not healthy, and I feel like sort of the calling aspect, or like you said, almost like a nutrient that you have to have.
Yeah.
If you have to have it, you should eat it. Or get it, because I don't know how else to be healthy.
Right. Yeah. It's like you're just going to feel incomplete and try to. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's and being true to your art can be an incredibly healthy thing. And I think my age in a not in a conventional way, my age is slightly holds me back in just the simple fact that I didn't grow up with this social media algorithm. And then,
Sure.
it kind of embedded with, I don't have that same comfort level. I mean, I use it and I do it as best I can, but I know that I'm still missing the mark in terms of who I can share with and being more active in really sharing in a very effective, efficient way. And we're in such an entrepreneurial culture. This is the time. If there's anything that makes you um, unique,
Sorry.
that was amazing.
As yeah, there we go. That's the social media connection.
That was amazing. I don't know what that was, but it was very Twilight Zone extra, which I appreciated. Um, so we're in this really incredible entrepreneurial time where people want new things. People want things that are different. They're tired of what's already been. Not to say that the appreciation of the classical canon um, isn't still valuable or important, but we're starting to reshape what that canon means and what that looks like in really amazing ways. And I think there so much what we're doing entrepreneurially and with new music that can make the previous assumptions of classical music more accessible to more people. And so I'm kind of like, man, it wasn't this way when I was in college. There wasn't the same access to this. It was, you have to get the right mentor that will introduce you to all the right people, and you have to go to the right school, and you have to do things exactly this way in order to please the committee to win the audition. I mean, this is a gold mine right now for people being completely true to themselves and maximizing what makes them special. And I think what makes people special is what they love and why, right? I think, just what are you passionate about? What makes you so happy? Why do you need to play this way? Tell me why, or show me why you need to, make me feel the same thing. And so that's exciting to me. I think this is, if ever you're going to be a musician, or an artist, this is the time.
I agree, and I think look, I wouldn't worry. I'm also like, I've been sort of out of the scene for a little bit and like connecting back to things, and the social media,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the whole has changed a lot
Yeah.
since, which blows me away. And there's a little like intimidation of just like, oh, I'm kind of older and I don't. But the truth of the matter is, it comes all down to the same thing of like sort of that moment that you found, just start being yourself. And I think
Right.
that's it. You be yourself and you look for a connection. Like the truth of the music, like what's music, right? It's really communicating between the artist and the audience and finding that connection that sort of joins us all together. And the beauty of music is like it can kind of sweep you away, and motion and an understanding that we don't get by just talking to each other, and
Yeah.
and except for in the literary arts, right?
Yeah.
Where there's that sort of thing. And I feel like that's where composers, musicians, music, and so forth really just need to like sort of you know throw their cares away and just look
Right.
to make those connections, even if it's small at the beginning, and then you grow.
Mhm.
And
There's a
you,
great quote that I have always loved, is that I can't remember who said it and who said it to me, but it is a great quote that says, "Music is one of the few mediums that can invade your senses and your consciousness without your permission."
I
And
yes,
and so for me, that feels like a very sacred thing.
I
That it's like it's a very sacred thing, with music, because I think you can try to block your ears, but I mean, it's so much easier to close your eyes, to not, to not see something visually. And though seeing many things, um, I mean, I guess you could say the art of cooking, if you're considering the culinary arts, that could also invade your senses. Again, you can smell something and be like, "Woo!" But in terms of it's interesting what you were talking about is, finding that thing that connects people, and how it makes us feel so many things that are all sometimes completely unexpected. You can exist in these two spaces where if you are, in a really, really dark place, listening to dark music could make you feel better. Listening to something that's in those depths of despair and agony that, makes you feel better. Or sometimes, it's the exact opposite of what you want that's going to make you feel better, listening to something that uplifts you, and vice versa, or listening to something that is incredibly anger inducing. I mean, it is unexpected how music can viscerally affect you emotionally, trigger the release of hormones that reading, or visual art may not necessarily always do. I'm not an elitist by any means, but I've thought about that statement a lot. And yes, there's something about sound waves, the electricity of sound waves, that scientifically can affect the consciousness without you giving permission or access.
And I don't know. There's lots of ways to sort of block out things, but I think the real truth is sort of that, like, if you get back to the missing nutrient, it's
Mm-hmm.
something that's all around us. We have sound, and music, specifically music, permeates our life regularly, without us even really registering that it is there. There's a
Yeah.
background music that's going on. There's things that we just expect uh, music to be there. Like when I was growing up, and I was playing with my friends, and I was like humming and doing this big giant theme song, and my friends looked at me and were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm making the music to our, adventure." Like, and I was just humming and doing it in the back of my head, and that's because, you know, you know, for me, it was missing because it wasn't there. We're out in the woods, doing our
Right.
thing and so forth, and we didn't have that music playing, so I had to make it. And I just, we live in a rich environment of where it's always sort of there. So I think, you know, I mean, I guess, we could block it out, but we don't. We always want it there, and I think we have there's a surprise all of a sudden that, like, oh, this is my favorite song, or
Mm-hmm.
wow, this sounds really good, or you have like just a nostalgic feeling of something or somewhere where it's a music that's permeating through you, that's doing like one of those things, like maybe you're sad and it's a sad little rhythm and you're feeling like community and so forth, or it's something that's
Mm-hmm.
angry and you're realizing, well, this is something I should be angry about, or and
Yeah.
it like sort of jogs you, um, or you know,
I love it when 90s music comes on, because I'm like, ah, takes me back to a time when I thought I had problems, but I didn't. That's
so
great. But actually, though, in all seriousness, that nostalgia is what I think, and that idea of connection is what really, really spoke to me and informed, my choice artistically to fuse folk and classical music together, because they were the two things that I felt really had the most impact on me and made me the musician that I was, and affected me viscerally in that way. And I also thought had too different of an audience, because my family and my dad's side, actually even my mom's side of the family came from the Shenandoah Valley, Lexington, Virginia area, and West Virginia. My dad's side of the family were all in the Shelby, North Carolina area, so the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so there was always mountain music. Granted, Granny, I'm sorry, God rest your soul. My granny couldn't sing her way out of a paper bag. I mean, so but she had the inflection down, and I mean, I would sit on the porch with her in Charleston and snap green beans, and she'd be rock. I mean, it's just a class. I mean, this is straight up classic, what you would think of in a stereotypical Southern, growing up scene or whatever. But honestly, it's so damn hot in Charleston almost all the time all you can do is sit on a shaded porch, drink sweet tea, and rock back and forth very slowly. It's like, I mean, there's a reason for that, right? That's why Southerners, Southerners, we talk slow. Sometimes we walk slow. We have to think slow because it is just too hot. And I have had friends from Michigan that have visited me and my family in Charleston, during the summertime, and they didn't really believe me. And then they're like, "Oh, I get it now." So that's my disclaimer. But I'll be sitting on, I had those memories of snapping beans with my granny on the porch, and Annie Mae Bales was her name, and listening to these songs. And some of them are mixed with church songs, some of them are secular. And that stuck with me. And then I kind of developed, as I got more into classical music, I developed this kind of a bit of a disdain for country music. And now I love country music, but more of the, not as much of the poppy country music that's high now, but the storytelling involved. So mountain music is all about, it's literally a musical narrative of a colloquial story that's been, shared. And they would write news stories about what happened in that holler, which is, kind of the space between the different mountains. It's not really a valley. It's like the hills kind of in between the mountains. That's the holler. So you can holler across the side and, how you doing? That kind of on the other side, right? So, and these songs just keep getting passed down. And a lot of them too came from Old English and Celtic art songs. These art song collections that happened, that, came about in early American musicology, which they located were actually from Old England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland. They got reformed. And so I started to realize later on, it was actually Dolly Parton, hearing a Dolly Parton CD of her doing some album that she did where she did, I heard her singing Silver Dagger, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember my granny. It just awoke these things. And then I started to realize there's so much passion. What I thought was so passionate and intense about classical music is so present in folk music, and mountain music especially. And then the ornaments or the inflection that you do with folk singing, those ornaments it's an appoggiatura, that's, a mordent, that's, these inflections are also in classical music. I got very visceral emotional feelings from classical. I was getting very visceral emotional feelings from folk. And I felt like my family couldn't relate, not my immediate family, but kind of cousins, aunts, uncles, that kind of thing, could not really always relate to what it was I was doing, because classical music seemed so elitist that they're like, that's too smart for me. It's kind of, that's too uppity for me. That's like beyond their realm. And I'm like, but no, these classical musicians were trashing hotel rooms. They, these composers were like, out like on drugs, and they were having affairs, and they killed people. Like, you don't understand. these composers were totes rock stars. I mean, this is like that when I play Mahler. Even when I play Beethoven would love like electric guitar these days. Him and AC/DC would have just been like that, and so taking kind of this mountain music that everybody thinks of as porch music, and also helping them realize there's real skill and technique involved in this too. And so when I started realizing, whoa, both of these can tell the story, and then actually the way I could put them together is to tell the same story in two different ways, and finding those comparisons. And so that was actually my journey when I was doing my master's, is to, okay, if I'm going to do this master's here while I'm trying to get tenure with Grand Rapids Symphony, like, I want to make the most out of this. What do I do? And it was, how do I share myself, which these are two parts of myself, and also somehow connect other people that wouldn't expect that either the voice can't do this or the horn can't do this, and vice versa. And I think that's one of the best compliments I ever received, was someone that had never gone to a classical concert before. I was a church pianist, and he lived in a rural area, and he loved, the traditional church hymns and things like that. And I did this, the show that I do, that, horn and, voice mixing, a cappella, folk melodies, and arrangements. he came to me and goes, I've never heard a French horn before. I didn't know it would sound like that. Number one, I didn't know I would love it so much. I just thought that none of it would make sense to me. That touched me more than anything else. That he'd never heard the horn before and didn't realize that classical music could be for him. And I found a way for it to be for him too, because music is for all of us, right? All types of music are for all of us. If it makes us feel something, like I say, I feel that way about visual art. I don't have to understand the painting techniques to appreciate the art.
Right. You just connect with it. Yeah. So, a kind of disclaimer or whatever and so forth. I basically became introduced to you through a work that you did, competing on an online competition with Lydia Bustler, and you'll have to tell me the folk song you were doing.
Yes. I found this piece by Lydia when I was doing my master's, and it was on the trajectory of trying to kind of find myself and find that artistic voice, and I decided to do a planetarium show. So I did all horn quartet music, and and we found images to go along with each of the pieces. So people came, did the show, and they listened to the music, and so I wanted to mix mediums, right, and create like this slideshow. Well, we needed a break because a horn quartet concert, like all the way, we were doing some really hard stuff. So I had been looking, and I wanted to do something with that folk element, and I found Lynn Folk Baird, actually, at Western Michigan University, as part of her thesis, had this incredible anthology database of female, very powerful, wonderful female composers for horn specifically, but also other brass, and mixed brass works. And I saw Lydia Bustler, Appalachia. I was like, what? That sounds amazing. And so I found the piece and I started playing, and I was like, I'm so in love. Well, the evolution of that was, okay, what does this piece make me feel? And I felt like it was a horn on the side of a holler singing out, to the other side and singing, and the horn was really singing this story. And it was the story for me is the story of the mountain. And there's not another song to me that describes the story of the mountain and the mountain people than Wayfaring Stranger. And so I said, I just felt like it was just a pull. I have to sing this at the end of it. Like, this can't be the way Lydia even ends the piece is kind of, you end on a bit of a tonic, but it doesn't feel super finished yet. And then I could just hear the ring of the mountains around it. And I was like, I'm just a poor wayfaring stranger. And I'm just like, yeah, this is it. This has to be it. And I remember when I was working on this actually in my kitchen, because I was just kind of experimenting around, like, how would this work? And I had two cats that were always fighting. And I remember I was kind of singing, and then I turned around and they were both staring at me like, they had gone from fighting to like glued in. And I was like, okay, there's something. I've calmed the beasts of burden, literally, so this could be something. And then that, and from there, that I ended up finding, so that kind of exists on its own, but that usually starts off my solo show, because I like to think of things in, sometimes, again, I think that classical music can alienate our audience because we don't consider the entire package of what we're sharing and performing, and all the different things that help make the story more effective. And because I do almost exclusively programmatic music, I do consider, what am I wearing? The style of the makeup. What is it? What am I going to do with it? I mean, the whole package with that is like, what scene am I setting up? Where am I transporting them? And how can I effectively make that happen? So I love to use lighting if I can with it. And I like to do a 20-minute set where it is one cohesive, no clapping in between. It's like you're going on this journey. Let's like close our eyes and just go. So after Wayfaring Stranger, I do Songs of the Wayfarer by Mahler. And that kind of that came about because we played it in Grand Rapids, and I cannot remember her name, but she was an incredible vocalist from Norway that did a folk song from her homeland that was like, oh, it was just haunting. And I'm like, you're singing it on a mountaintop, right? And she did songs of the Wayfarer, and I was like, the horn needs to play this. And lo and behold, there's an arrangement that exists. And then I finish off at the end of Songs of the Wayfarer, I sing "Oh Death." So it's like this full life cycle. So Lydia's portion of it is just this beginning. It's the sunrise. It's the beginning of this journey of our Wayfaring Stranger. That's how I've always kind of put it together. So forever for me, I will never perform this piece without Wayfaring Stranger at the end of it. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I feel like it was in your soul when you wrote it.
So, let's so I'm curious a little bit more about talking about career paths and so forth. So now you're this you're entrepreneurial traveling musician touring, right?
I'd like to tour more, but right now it's just, oh yeah, I'll come do a recital here. So maybe only about 3 or 4 times a year. I'm kind of out. Summer is a little bit better. There's summer festivals, and I have more opportunity there. But I'd love to be more of a tour, but not in the conventional like rock tour as most people would think.
Well, that is kind of the deal, right? I mean, you're kind of, it's great to play in between, but it's usually one way or the other way, right? You either have a solid place like a home where or you're touring and you have to tour because.
Right, that's where the money is, because nobody makes money off of recordings anymore.
Yeah,
they just don't. I mean, there's too many other ways to, and now recordings are just used as they're more promotion, right? It's how you get people to want to come be in the seats and see you perform live. The bucket list goal for me is to get enough revenue together, whether it's grant money or crowdsource funding. I am dying to have a concerto written that involves folk singing, either a concerto or just a concert piece, longer, on the longer side of a full concert piece that tells the story of Sybil Ludington, the 16-year-old girl that did the ride of Paul Revere further, way further up the coast, and made it possible for so many more militia to be warned about the British coming. Her father was a captain, and she literally did this entire 12 hours, in the dead of night, rode all the way up the coast, fighting off bandits and stuff. It's great. It's amazing. Come on, young 16-year-old girl, female horn player, hunting horn, hello, riding on a horse. Oh, I can hear it now. It's great. Fighting off bandits and stuff. Come on, it's. And old England, like colonial. There's all kinds of folk songs waiting to happen in that. So that's the bucket list goal. But
composers get writing.
Yes, I am. I have not. My orchestra is very. They are all about the art, and so now that COVID is over, I have a master plan to approach them with, that maybe we could do something in conjunction with our orchestra at some point, if our maestro and board think it's the right thing. But I'm just beginning with this idea, so I've got some time left, because I think anybody knows, whenever you're working with a commission or an orchestra or a conductor, anything like that, or grants, you're looking at 2-3 years away
at least.
Yeah, that's two. This is my 5-year plan.
Yeah, I think that's, we always talk about, all the PR and all the stuff and so forth. There's always kind of really towards the end of the project, if not the completion of, from even in the past, right? And we're talking about and promoting it and so forth and everything. And I think it's always good to remember that, like, oh, the seed of this was like a long time ago, and everybody's like, oh yeah,
Mhm.
the idea. I was like, yeah, it's a little more about the idea. It's you plant the seed, you gotta get it grow, and you find support and find some more support and find
Yeah.
other support and and now we got to rewrite everything or
Oh yeah, now
re-rehearse
it's
everything.
refining it, and so you're like, wait, what was my original idea to begin with?
And then you think you're all done, and then they're like, oh, so this was a great like draft.
Yeah,
And they're
yeah.
and then it feels like you're all starting. Yeah. So it's it's let's just say this. It's great to be the consumer of so many people's final product. You know.
I have to say, I am so excited. When is the deadline again for the?
It's this week. I think it's this
Yeah,
week. Yeah.
I cannot wait. I need a creative project to sink my teeth into. I've had crazy family stuff going on, and when I say crazy family stuff, it isn't like, oh, my kid won't get their homework done. It's not. No, it's like it's crazy, crazy stuff. Like very high stakes things with three members of my family that I'm in charge of taking care of. So I'm needing people to say, oh, what can we do to help? And I'm like, have me come out and play somewhere, call me out. Let's do a duet recital. Let's do like, cause all my, all my professional friends, like, what can I do to help? Give me a creative project to do. Give me, it's the play. It's my refuge. So I cannot wait to sink my teeth into these submissions. And then I'll get to see you in November, and do a recording. I'm so excited. I love recording. I love it, love it, love it.
So
Performing and recording. So
this is a unique time. You haven't done this before.
I
Why don't
know.
you tell me a little bit about what so you've gotten already a healthy amount of submissions. So the project goes. I always tell a musician, I was just like, when we need 15, right? It's 15 minutes of fame.
Mhm.
You have to have 15 pieces, and so we've got many more than 15, and so it's a healthy group to pick from. I am more than confident you'll find a piece or two. But what's your anticipation of what could happen or what you're hoping to
I
happen?
I mean, I'm a little prepared for everything, and I know I've gotten some really lovely messages, contacts from my website from composers, really trying to do their due diligence, like what's your range and all this. I am fully expecting to be challenged out of my mind on things, for sure. I fully expect that I'm going to end up probably needing to do something outside of my comfort zone, and I'm all about it because I think a friend said this to me the other day. So your comfort zone is here. Somewhere out here is where art lives, right? so so I'm prepared to kind of be really super challenged. I I don't normally connect to what I call uber contemporary music. Like I'm not a 12 tone girl. I just don't emotionally connect to it as well. However, I'm approaching this with a completely open mind. If I can find a story in what's being written, I'm going to be okay. And I'm happy to challenge myself in whatever way I need to. But, I want there to be a story. And my secret hope is that there somehow within these 15 1-minute works, I could create like a whole thing. Does that make sense? Like an actual, emotional storyline with arcs and whatever. So that because how rad would that be if we have composers from all over the world that have never met each other, never heard each other's works, don't know me, and I'm able to make this incredible quilt of into this like somehow some cohesive thing. That'd be okay. Now I'm getting really excited about that, but I have to I have to prepare myself that may not be able to happen. But I personally I'm a person of faith, but I also believe in we can call it by a lot of different names. So the universe has this incredible energy, and if you have the desire to connect, somehow that will happen. That will be there. So I'm kind of, yeah, that's my hope, that I can kind of create this whole cohesive thing with 15, 15 different 1 minutes.
I think we might have a chance. I'm happy to say. So I've done this project, with a bunch of different musicians and styles and aesthetics and sort of missions or specific calls and so forth. And I find this particular one is really sort of attractive for creativity. And I find that when the musician really like understands and knows like what they're sort of drawn to, they can sort of put the word out that gets the idea across to hopefully other artists and composers and creators that are looking this, like you said, this sort of make that quilt. Everybody's still using these pieces of fabric, and it'll all come together. I'm looking forward to it. We will see.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. And I mean, look, I think it's insanely challenging for a composer to try to write for somebody with only 60 seconds, right? Like a 1 minute work. So composers, I fully expect you to be like, okay, fine, and then challenge the hell out of me. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm all about it.
Very enthusiastic. Well, as a composer myself, I mean, this is the thing that gets us excited, is just to see somebody so enthusiastic and jumping full in, because there are a lot of different pieces. You will get many to look and choose from and so forth, and we can, as a composer, I can say, we like you said, we stretch the gamut. We'll most like to push the bounds a little bit. So,
I love it. I mean, yeah, let's do it.
But yeah, so it's exciting. We'll have to revisit all this, and you can give us the rundown of what succeeded and what was different from what you expected.
Yeah, absolutely. I do hope there's a little bit of folk magic in there, just a little bit, because that is my jam.
If there wasn't, I would be sincerely depressed. The thing that the project has done I think over 70 of these, and we've had some really, really interesting stuff from like mandolin orchestra, but we've also done like string quartets and solo flute and cello and violin and we have new people every call and so forth, and we got a lot of regulars too, and so this is such a unique opportunity. I hope that like every composer just sort of dives into it and just throws their heart into it, right? I mean, that's every once in a while, I'll have a composer goes, "Oh, what are you looking for?" I'm like, "Well,
oh yeah, no, you can't do that."
I just like, just do what you do.
Authentic.
That's what we're looking for. Put yourself out there. Like we were talking about, like we're looking for somebody who's feeling sort of comfortable to put that 1 minute.
That's a challenge. That is. But the best, I think, because I've done a lot as a pianist in music theater, and I've worked very close. In fact, I have, one of my mentors was the director of music theater at Central Michigan University, and that's kind of the smallest of all her titles that she's done. She actually worked with Marcel Marceau and studied mime professionally. So she's incredible with movement. And so I actually have her stage my shows when we work together. I perform for her and sing for her and have her kind of workshop me about, is what I'm doing effective, and she and she said to me, she goes, the more structure you have, that's where true creativity lives. When everything is really wide, I mean, think necessity is the mother of invention. That's another phrase, right? But when you have parameters with something, and if you feel restricted in some way, that's when real true creativity comes out, because you're trying to find a way out of it in a way. So composers, if you feel like you're an animal in a cage trying to gnaw its own leg off, like out of the trap to get out, it's probably a good thing. I don't know. But it's really true. I want authenticity. I want to, and I think when we're authentic, and there's a great Martha Graham quote too that I've always thought about, and this came from my dear friend Annette, this mentor of mine. Agnes DeMille just gotten all of the success from choreographing the Oklahoma Ballet, the Dream Ballet in Oklahoma, and people they're hiring her for everything, and she starts to feel incredibly imposter syndrome, I think, starts to come out. There's this feeling of imposter syndrome, and she's like, I don't even think my stuff is good. Like, but people want it. How do I even know it's good? And Martha Graham, I might have to look it up at some point, but I don't have it completely memorized. But ultimately, what Martha Graham is telling her is that she calls it a quickening that happens through the authenticity of what we do. That it is not for us to decide what is good or what isn't. It is up to us to be authentic in our creation. And there's a blissful unrest in the dissatisfaction, the dissatisfaction of constantly creating. And that for us, the joy is in the authenticity of sharing, because there's not going to be another one like us. In what we do in that moment, what we are creating, by just being ourselves is unique. And so it's up to us to be authentic and effective in our authenticity, not to decide whether it's good or bad, and not to always be our critic. And you have to let it go. You release it out into the world, and then it'd be like, okay, if I'm proud of it because this is what I truly wanted, doesn't matter whether who does or does not think it's good. It's not for me to decide anymore.
I agree.
I love that. That makes me feel more comfortable when I'm working on something. And in fact, if I'm working on an arrangement, or because I've had to really do a lot of my own arrangements for things to kind of, realize my vision, I guess. And I don't have a lot of quantity of those things. So I wouldn't say I'm prolific by any means, because when the thought gets it's very seductive, that thought of like, I hope, if there's even a thought of, oh, I hope this is really popular, or I hope this, gets a lot of hits or something like that, I have to put it down. I just stop. I have to stop and walk away. If I start caring like, oh, what are people going to think of this? Is it, I just have to stop and walk away, because then it's not authentic anymore.
I think the most important part is, like you said, you keep going, the sort of persistence, and just, you do what you do, keep going. Mm-hmm. The longer you get to do it, then mm-hmm. the richer you are. When I'm talking to artists about, the sort of rewards, and I'm like, the reward is the journey. I mean, I hate to be trite like that, but that's true. If you're doing the work that you enjoy, that's the reward. Everything else, is bonus, or not even. Sometimes it just gets in the way, right? I mean, it's just that's try to enjoy life at every moment that you can.
I'll be fair, I'm really terrible at that. I'm the person that wants to make the best time on the trip as possible. You only stop to pee when you get gas. You bring all your food with you, so you don't have to take any extra time. And I have to fight going through life that way a little bit too. I'm always kind of like, screw the journey. I want to get there and have a cocktail, right? Like,
sure.
Destination, have a cocktail. But unfortunately, art, the act of so it takes a lot of mental energy for me if I'm going to create something, to be in that headspace and stay with it, because it's always a very long project. It's not something that's short. This idea of songwriting where people are like, oh, it's just 5 minutes, blah blah blah. Okay, that might happen, but then working on the arrangements, since I don't have a producer and I don't have an arranger, to do that for me, I have to kind of do those layers too. Then schedule when recording's going to be, or send music out to my musicians that might come and yeah, it's that I wrote that song in like 5 minutes. Yeah, most of the time that doesn't happen. That's kind of unicorn type moments. So, like that's also you finding a 4-leaf clover.
Right. Yeah, it's a process. Not that, like you said, inspiration happens. You get those moments and so forth, but they enjoy it because it's fleeting.
Right. Absolutely. And that those moments might happen, but then there's still so many levels that come after that. So you might have the raw material, but then what do you do with it after?
Right. Yeah.
That also is part of the process. So it's like building, if anybody's ever built houses or done really large construction type of projects, there are layers and you have to keep, building with those layers and stay with the project. Otherwise, you just have a big old broken down car you meant to restore in your front yard.
And look, and once that car is restored and so forth and everything, you got to drive it too, and you need a
Yeah,
destination.
car shows.
Which people, that's part of the process as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, Mary Beth, this was an extreme pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you for being part of 15 Minutes of Fame. I am, looking forward to you coming here to New York to record. I'm really excited about that. And if you're a composer, this is the thing to write for. You've got a week. Go, 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 go. And we'll be doing more. And yeah.
You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. It's just pretty much my name and Facebook. I have a public, personal page, but I do have a professional page that has all my other links to it. Instagram is Mary Beth Orr Third Horn. Or on YouTube, just Google my name on YouTube. But my website has all of these links too. Please come see what I'm doing and see if that sounds fun to you, because I want to have fun and make some art, man.
Awesome.
Or lady, or they, them.
That's right. Thank you again, and more. We'll see you soon.